How's it going, guys? This is Nick from Stridewise.com. Today I'm taking a look at the unusual but pretty familiar Apollo boots from the new boot company YRX. All right, now before I go on, I want to mention that you can get a discount on these boots if you want. They're already stupid inexpensive, but you can get $25 off if you, I don't know if it's a link or a code, I'm going to figure this out later, but just in the description below, I'm going to have instructions here. But click that link and then you can get $25 off, and they're going to be even cheaper than they already are. I'm going to eventually probably come back and have to cut this out of the video when they decide that I'm not worth having a discount anymore. So if you like them, get the discount now rather than later. But yeah, anyway, for now, there's a discount code if you like the boots. If not, no worries at all. So let's check out the boots. All right, so YRX, a pretty weird name for a company that makes some delightfully weird looking shoes. Actually, on their website, they have a frequently asked questions portion where they have the question, what does YRX mean? And their kind of snarky answer is, what do Google, IKEA, Nike, and Sony mean? So I don't know, I guess YRX doesn't mean anything, but nonetheless, they call themselves a minimalist boot brand, and while they are more dainty than a lot of the Goodyear welted boots that I have reviewed in the past, it does have a lot going for it. One of the cool things actually is that it comes with a free brush and shoe horn, which I definitely appreciated. I also wanted to point out that much of this boot is handmade. It's not entirely handmade. Some people would call it handcrafted, since some of the stitching is done by machine. But nonetheless, this does have more of a human touch than I was expecting for a company that has such a low price point. These shoes are very inexpensive, partly because they only sell online, which helps you save on overhead, and partly because they're also made in China. So let's take a closer look at the boot itself and see if the quality can match up to the price. Now, if you know much about boots, or if you Google things related to boots, you are probably already thinking it. This boot looks a lot like the Jack boot from the company Taft. It is their flagship boot. Taft is like a 20-something million company that was established a few years back, and their best known boot is the Jack boot. This is what my pair looks like. It's gray wool with a red counter. At the moment, YRX only has 3 versions of this Apollo boot. But if you look at this Apollo boot and this Jack boot, you can see they really are very, very similar. It's a woolen upper, and also you've got leather on the toe cap and on the counter as well. There are a couple of minor differences, like the fact that there's no pull tab on the Apollo boot. The vamp is also ever so slightly longer, just a little bit at the end of the laces, so it gives an impression of a slightly longer sort of shoe. But even down to the fact that it is fully leather lined and that it has a leather outsole with these like a Vibram-like mini lugs here, it really is just extremely similar, but it is like something like $70 to $100 cheaper. So I'm just gonna call it, this is a boot to consider buying if you don't want to shell out the price of the Portuguese-made Taft boot and you want to instead try out something a little friendlier on the wallet. So let's take a look at the materials, because they're also just a tiny little bit different than the aesthetic. So when it comes to the materials, this wool is not actually that much like Taft. This is cashmere wool, which is a much fancier type of wool. Everyone loves cashmere. This cashmere comes from Guangzhou. That's the 3rd biggest city in China. Fun fact, I used to live in the 1st biggest city in China, Shanghai, for a couple of years. Guangzhou, checked it out. Haven't seen many goats there, but apparently they have some goats there because they get the wool from the goats. Cashmere, relative to regular wool, is better at regulating temperature and insulating and such, and also feels a lot softer. Like, this feels kind of like velvet, which is nice. The only info I could get on the leather is that it's imported to China, but it's about 1.8 to 2 millimeters thick, which is relatively thick for just this sort of leather you're gonna get here. And it's full grain and it's tier 1, so it's pretty good quality. It marks like relatively quickly, but you know, as long as you have some polish on hand, I don't think it's gonna be a big deal. Oh, I also really wanna mention this is fully lined with calfskin leather as well, which is very nice and soft, and it helps to minimize any break-in issues, although it's already a wool shoe, so you're not gonna get that much break-in anyway, and I didn't get any break-in whatsoever. As far as the sole goes, the YRX says, we have taken the sophistication of a leather sole and embedded functionality of rubber grips, all without compromising style. And I guess I agree with them there. The leather, I'm gonna get into this in the con section of the video, but leather really is starting to scratch up around here. That's not that unusual for a leather sole in kind of any brand anyway, but nonetheless, you can expect it to get kind of scratched up. But you know, leather soles, they're nice and flexible, they're nice and soft, and this does confer some pretty decent grip with the mini lugs as well. So after the outsole, there's a few things that are different to Taft. Like the wool is different to Taft as well. It uses cashmere, not the regular wool. The insole, midsole stuff going on here is also a little bit different to what you get with Taft. There's a layer of cork after the outsole, and it has a shank as well, a steel shank. And there's also a Dura EVA comfort strip in there. So that's a material that's more commonly used in sneakers, but there are a lot of boot companies out there. Thursday again is one, there are a few others. They'll put one into their boots because it helps to absorb shock. Now the shock absorption is not the best in the entire world with these shoes. I do want to mention that, but it's still better than if there were no EVA comfort strip in there. So that's definitely a bonus. I like that. Lastly, the sole and the upper are Blake stitched and also cemented, which means it's like sort of glued on, but it's also like stitched through. I do have a bit of bone of contention here. I mean, it's not really a big deal, but I was a bit confused as to why there's all this stitching going around the outside of the shoe when this is Blake stitched shoe, which doesn't have that, and that's because it's fake. So it looks like a Goodyear welt, but similar to the Taft Jack boot and a lot of boots out there. It's not a massive deal that they do this, but this stitching here it's aesthetic. It's for aesthetic purposes. It's not actually super functional. This is not a Goodyear welted boot. Goodyear welts, they do have this stitching going around the outside. Again, it's not a massive deal, but just don't expect this to be easy to resole when the time comes, because this is a Blake stitched boot and they are a lot harder to resole, although not impossible to resole, when compared to a Goodyear welted boot. All right, so if you decide to pull the trigger and buy a pair of these shoes, for taking care of the materials here, for the woolen upper, first of all, you meant to just keep dust and dirt off of it with this little brush they provide. And again, it is a nice touch. They provide this little brush for you. So, you give it a cleaning like that every now and then. When it needs a more thorough cleaning, they recommend you use cold water and a mild detergent. And they specifically recommend the wool and cashmere shampoo from the Laundress, which is a very fancy sort of brand. It's kind of based here in New York. You see a lot of Laundress stores. Very fancy cleaning product. You do that and then you just let it dry on a towel. For the leather, on the other hand, they also recommend keeping that clean with the little brush they provide. And when it gets dirty, they recommend getting some saddle soap. They recommend Kiwi saddle soap. And then you get a rag and you rub that into the soap, then rub that onto the leather, and that's going to help you to keep the leather pretty clean. When it comes to conditioning the leather, they didn't really give me any recommendations. So I'm going to go ahead and say what my usual recommendation is. You can use Cobbler's Choice or Venetian Shoe Cream. These are like wax heavy products that are going to be good at restoring the luster of the leather and keeping it moist over time. So yeah, those are the products you need to take care of these boots. Now, when it comes to the fit and sizing, another similarity this company has with Taft is the fact that they don't have any half sizes and they don't have any wider widths either. Not for this shoe anyway. So they only come in whole sizes, full sizes. I don't know what you call that. So I'm an 11.5 on a Brannock device. That's like the device you use to measure the size of your feet. I'm an 11.5 and they recommend you size down. So I got an 11 for these. It's fine, the fit is fine, but I do have to wear pretty thin socks. Even though the boot did stretch a little bit over the couple of weeks since I've been wearing them. But yeah, it's a relatively tight fit. I would have liked it to have a half size. Of course I would, because I am a half size myself, but it works fine. The 11 size works fine for me. No other widths though, and no half sizes, so that's gonna make a lot of people unhappy if those are the categories you fall into. As for actually wearing in the shoe, it is fully leather lined, which is lovely, and also it's made of wool, so there's not really a break-in period. I didn't get any blisters, which is an upside. It's relatively flexible as well. That has a lot to do with the fact that this is a Blake stitched boot. It's not a Goodyear welted boot. There aren't as many layers in the sole, so pretty nice and flexible. The outsole here is also leather, which also is like relatively flexible and relatively soft as well. You get the lugs here for the grip. So the grip is pretty decent. It is not on the heel. The leather here is getting beaten up a bit. As it gets beaten up over time, it's going to have a little bit more grip on the heel, but nonetheless, it's not the best grip in the entire world, but the lugs here do a decent job. I do want to say though, as far as comfort goes, the shoes do have a shank in them, as I mentioned, but I gotta say, walking around in these, it feels like there's only arch support on the right shoe and not the left shoe. So it's not the best made shoe in the entire world. But look, for the price point, I think a lot of people are gonna be happy with it nonetheless. Now, when it comes to the price, the wording on the website is, through responsive production, a lean business model, and long-term thinking, they are able to make stupid, inexpensive boots. That part is my wording, but they're stupid cheap. These boots cost $199. But the whole time I've been looking at the brand, it's been $199, which is very inexpensive. I mean, it's not a Goodyear welted boot, but still it's fully leather lined. It's a nice boot for $199. If they were $300 or $400, I would be pretty upset given some of the quality control issues I'm going to mention a little bit later on. But look, for $199, it's like not the same quality as Thursday boots. Thursday boots are well known for making Goodyear welted boots for like $199. That's like really good value. It's about what I want to pay for it. $199, it's very fair. That's what I'm going to say about YRX boots. All right, so why should you consider getting a pair of Apollo boots from YRX? Look, they're cheap. That's the big thing with this brand. They're cheap. They're very inexpensive shoes, under $200. Very remarkable for a pair of Blake Stitch boots, especially the fact that it is made with cashmere wool, which is an extra expensive type of wool. It's also very lightweight, which a lot of people like. That's going to be a nice break for some people from like Goodyear welted footwear, which is like easier to resole, but you know, heavier and less flexible. This is also a very, very flexible shoe. So you've got the fact that it is also fully leather lined, which adds some comfort there. It's very, very flexible. It's decent grip because you got these little lugs here on the bottom. It's not amazing on the heel, but like whatever. You got the lugs here. So for a shoe that is like Blake Stitch with a leather sole, it's nice and lightweight. It's got a decent amount of grip. It's very flexible. And also you get the free shoe horn as well with this, the free shoe horn and the free shoe brush, which is a nice touch. But the big thing here is that people like these boots. There's something very strange about this because I have many shoes that cost twice the price, 3 times the price of these shoes. But like the fact is, I've never gotten as many compliments on a pair of shoes as I have on this particular pair of shoes, which is gonna be outrageous to some people who are gonna think that the more they pay for a shoe, the more people should like them. But even though these are very inexpensive shoes, yeah, I've gotten more compliments on them. And that is indeed the brand slogan. It's written on the box, prepare for compliments. The fact is, yeah, the first day I wore these, right up until yesterday, the last time I was wearing these, people said things about how nice these boots looked. So they're cheap and people like them. All right, there are a few potential downsides you might have with this particular pair of boots. I'll start small, work my way up. There are no half sizes, there are no other widths, and it's already like a pretty slim fitting sort of shoe. That's gonna be annoying for a lot of people out there with unusual sized feet, or even just people with half sizes like myself. I was a bit annoyed. The fit's fine, like I wear them, I don't complain that much, but I would have really liked 11.5 and they don't have it, so that's a bit of a down. They're not that water resistant, they're Blake stitched. That also means they're not super easy to resole as well when the time eventually comes. And there are some other like minor QC stuff, like for instance, the leather outsole here, it's already like pretty significantly kind of coming away. Not that it's like coming off the shoe, but it's getting scratched up here. Now leather soles just kind of do that. Nonetheless, you can expect that. This like nice rich brown color here is getting scratched up, and I imagine with another few months and definitely with a year of wear, this is not gonna look anywhere near this pretty. I mean, not many people look at the bottom of your shoes, but nonetheless, it annoys some people. That's kind of leather soles, that's sort of how it works, but even for a leather sole, this seems to have gotten scratched up and lost its color like more quickly compared to a lot of other leather soles that I have out there. The EVA strip on the inside of the shoe, that's underneath the footbed. And on the right shoe, it's been sort of like coming up at the inside of the footbed, which looks like a little bit shoddy, and I'm not 100% certain at the integrity of the footbed and the EVA strip and everything like that. Also, the right shoe does have arch support. No, the right shoe doesn't have arch support and the left shoe does have arch support. I don't know why. I don't think it's the most consistently made shoe. Like it's not the most consistent sort of production, but they're cheap. That's the thing. Again, if they were $300 or $400, I'd be really annoyed by that. They're less than $200. That's the cost of like for like pretty nice sneakers. You know, there are a lot of sneakers that cost more than that. These are under $200. So if what you're getting, they look really, really good and they're really cheap. And I still, again, I've never gotten more compliments on a pair of shoes than I have on this one. So I'm not gonna sit here and pretend they're as well made as a pair of Vibergs or a pair of Red Wings or even a pair of Taft shoes. Like they're definitely not as high quality as the Taft Jack boot, but they're cheaper and they look very nice. So if you're willing to put up with those like little issues, which at the end of the day don't really ruin the experience of the shoe, and you know, I still get the nice compliments on them, I think they're a pretty good deal, but just don't expect perfection. All right, those are my thoughts on the YRX Jack boot, Apollo boot, the Apollo boot from YRX. Very inexpensive, not perfect, but for the price, you know, not so bad. If you want to read my full review, by the way, I've got a bunch of pictures and everything else in the description below. I encourage you to check it out. And make sure you subscribe as well, because I have a whole lot more boot reviews and jeans reviews and all other sorts of reviews and men's fashion-y sort of stuff coming up.